What a win it was for Michigan against Michigan State as the Wolverines beat the Spartans for just the third time in their last 11 meetings. Joel Klatt was on the call for Fox. He joins us now from the Fox studios in L.A. And I mentioned you were there, Joel. What was your take in terms of the on-the-field performance by Michigan?
I thought it was dominant. I thought that the score was actually closer than what the game indicated in a lot of respects because of the lack of Michigan to turn some great field position in the first half into points. And credit Michigan State's defense for really bowing their neck in those situations and keeping them off the scoreboard. But that's why I said what I did at the end of the game, which is that this is for real because they dominated Michigan State fully and completely. Outside of one turnover inside the 10-yard line that then all of a sudden they had to run a reverse pass in order to get a touchdown. Michigan thoroughly dominated Michigan State, and I know the Spartans were banged up, but that was as impressive a performance as you're going to get on the road in a rivalry game, in particular from a team that has been labeled a team that cannot win those games. 1-5 under Jim Harbaugh in those rivalry games. So thoroughly impressed with what they did, and there's room for growth, too. And this is another thing, Rev, that I said during the broadcast. I think that when Shea Patterson starts taking more shots down the field, they're going to continue to get more and more explosive, in particular when he breaks out of the pocket. When he scrambles, those big wide receivers have a big advantage down the field, and when he starts finding them rather than throwing the ball away or just running for 2 or 3 yards, then watch out. They could be very explosive. Yeah,
a team that is second in the Big Ten in passing efficiency, just night and day better than they were in that aspect of the game a year ago. What about the pregame stuff? And I've seen you on a lot of different platforms during the course of this week. Obviously, we're at midweek at this point, so I'm not the first to ask you about this. You have said, and I'm quoting you here, that you loved it, what happened between these two teams before the game. Tell me why.
Okay, so first of all, I think a lot of that has to be perspective, okay? If I was an administrator or a coach, I'd probably hate it. If I was a high school coach or a high school parent, I would probably hate it. But as a player who does not have a kid that's playing high school football or doesn't have a kid that's playing college football, this is why I love it, is because this is what makes college football so great. You got to understand now, Rev, professional sports are so sterile today in our country. They're so corporate and they're so sterile. All these venues are the same. These players all, you know, they all hug after the game. They're trading jerseys, so on and so forth. Very few times we get an opportunity to watch a competition between two teams that genuinely don't like each other. And I loved being a part of those games as a player, which is why I love it. And it's something that I think is unique. Was it taken a little bit overboard? Yeah, probably. No one was hurt. And quite frankly, I thought it was interesting. It was incredible to watch it all unfold before the game. And I know that there are some that are not going to like it. But for me, give me a rivalry. Give me a game that the players are more passionate about the name on the front of the jersey than they are on the back of the jersey, and I'm going to like it.
Joel, I'm going to do the impossible and try to change your mind and tell you why I think it was bad for the game. Here's why I think it was different than all the back and forth the last couple of years, which I think the back and forth the last couple of years has been fun. But here's why I think this is different. First of all, it was physical contact. Michigan State clotheslining, Devin Bush being held back by a coach. What happened if that coach wasn't there to hold Devin Bush back? What was Devin going to do? I'm assuming it was going to be something physical. Destroying the logo. When people say, what was he doing, just digging in the grass? It's not somebody's backyard. That's a symbol of a Spartan, just like Michigan has a symbol for their school. You say you don't have a son playing high school football. Joel Klatt was a 3-year starter at Colorado, one of the few that have ever done that. Joel's dad, Gary, was a great high school coach. James Laurinaitis, who feels the same way that you felt, was a great player at Ohio State. You may not have a high school player living in your home, but a lot of people are watching you, and they're watching James, and they love the work you do, and you guys are so good. I can't believe that a high school player is not going to say, hey, Joel Klatt said it was okay to do that with the rival. James Laurinaitis said it was okay to do that to a rival. We play Madison East next week. They're our rival. We're going to do what they say makes a great rivalry. So that's why I think this is different. It was physical, and it was property destroyed and disrespectful. This is a great rivalry. Now we're talking about everything but the game. Plus, all the people that have played in this game, their legacy is no longer valid because it's about what happened, in my opinion, off the field, not what happened during the game. So
Listen,
that's my
you make really
point.
strong arguments. Coach, you make really strong arguments. And everything that you said is right. You know, I think my position is more indefensible, to be honest with you. I probably like all the comments afterwards more than I did the physical altercation before the game, the clotheslining, and then the chewing up of the grass before the game by Devin Bush. And I understand how things like that can elevate and escalate very quickly, which is, by the way, why we saw that game get called so close to the vest by the officials. They handed out, I believe it was 8 or 9 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties in that game. They were very quick to do that, and I think it was because of what happened before the game. So you're right. Listen, do we want physical contact? No, we don't want physical contact. The only premise that I'll defend that I had, which again was not a very defensible position, was that I do love it when it's clear that the team and all the players are caring more for the name on the front than they are the back. And to some degree, that's the case with this rivalry between Michigan and Michigan State, certainly with the comments afterwards. But listen, Coach, I stand corrected. You're right. You're absolutely right.
And you make a great point about the name on the back and the front, but that's always been true. That didn't just become true this past Saturday. Pete?
Well, that's true.
I'm going to piggyback on what Jerry said, and I really feel like this was the biggest win in Jim Harbaugh's 4-year tenure at Michigan. And there's been very little, Joel, I feel like, that's been talked about. I mean, Michigan asserted itself as a national title contender. They got the big game jinx off their back. There's so much positive momentum for that program right now. They're favored to win the Big Ten. And here we are with dueling statements from athletic directors. And there was just an immaturity from both sides. I'm not going to finger one side or the other. I feel like they were both brought down and devalued that win in that game and that rivalry through their actions.
Yeah, you know what? You're probably right, Pete. But good thing there's guys like you and I and Coach and Rev that can sit here and remind everybody what a great football team they are, because everything you said there was correct as well, in that they are the Big Ten favorite, at least in a lot of our estimation right now. They're playing the best football. That defense has continued to do great things, in particular defending the pass, getting pressure even without Rashawn Gary on the field. And I would tell you this, they've fixed some things that were clear deficiencies a year ago. Keep in mind now, they're 2.5 yards better on first down offensively than they were a year ago. What does that allow them to do? Stay on schedule and convert on third down. They're so much more improved on third down this year than they were a year ago. And then Shea Patterson, this guy's not turning the ball over. He's only thrown 2 interceptions, 12 touchdowns, and he's also converting with his feet. We saw the huge 4th down play against Michigan State, and if he's making those type of plays, I don't see anybody in the Big Ten that's going to beat them, in particular with the way that Ohio State played at Purdue. You're right, Pete. Everything you said there, but I'm here to remind everybody the truth, which is Michigan is for real, which is why I said it. This is a real deal for Michigan fans now. They've been wanting to be a part of the fray, wanting to be a part of this national championship conversation for a long time. I think it's real this year. I think that they're part of the conversation and deservedly so.
Let's hope that's where the focus is again going forward the rest of the year. And to your point, and to Pete and Jerry's point, that wasn't necessarily the main focus coming out of this game. Culpability on both sides for that happening, but let's hope the rest of the way we're talking about that Big Ten East race.
And candidly, Rev, I think a lot of the criticism goes towards Michigan because of Devin Bush and he needed to be restrained and the logo and everything. I got to tell you, Michigan State is not unscathed in this thing. I was in the booth watching this. There's clearly personnel and players on the field for Michigan. They were a hair late getting onto the field. I don't care if it's 2 or 3 minutes. Everything goes by clockwork, and they went arm in arm and took up the entire field. They're not scot-free in this whole deal. That's not... Listen, that type of altercation, I think, would happen for any team if you tried to go arm in arm the length of the field while they're standing there. That's a bad look for both teams.
You're preaching to the choir here. I mean, I think this could have been more civil on both sides. I said this yesterday. I'll say it again. You know, to me, it's everything I ever needed to know I learned in kindergarten. I mean, if you're walking somewhere and someone's in your way, you ask them to move. If someone asks you to move, you do move. If that person doesn't move, you don't bowl them over. You don't deface somebody's property. 2 wrongs don't make a right. I mean, to me, all of these things are very basic lessons in civility. But ultimately here, these are educational opportunities. These are educational institutions. College football gets a lot of negativity around it. this was an opportunity to do something positive and to say that, hey, mistakes were made, and I wish we would have handled it differently from the adults in the room on both sides. And unfortunately, in this case, it didn't happen. So hopefully it will going forward.
Unfortunately, Rev, I have to continue to remind myself that I'm apparently an adult now, so I've got to hold myself to a higher standard.
It's weird how that happens. More from Joel coming up, so stick around. We'll hear from him again later in the show.